I wonder how many of you have ever been out on a rowing boat on a lake or the sea. I can remember being out with some friends, and in one of the boats, on one oar, there was a man who was a big, strong guy, and on the other oar, there was a young woman. The end result of this was they went round and round in circles, and the rest of us just sat in our little boats and laughed our heads off. They would have been all right if there'd have been two big, strong men. They'd have been all right if there'd have been two size 12 women. But as it was, they were out of balance and they got nowhere. Well, this morning I want to talk about the need for rhythm and balance in our spiritual lives. I'm afraid there's probably nothing new in what I say, but I hope that what I share with you will help you just a bit in your Christian discipleship, in your walk with Jesus Christ day by day. We need to know the daily reality of realizing that God is present with us at all times when we open ourselves to him. Now, I've got to say at the outset, I'm preaching to myself today. In fact, I feel a bit of a hypocrite saying anything at all because I am an activist. I like to get things done. I like to be busy. I like to be with people. So throughout my Christian life, the thing I found the very hardest is just to be still. And it's only been in retirement and as I've got older that I've realized that I actually have to get a balance, and that in many of the things I've been doing over the years, I've been like those rowers, just going round and round in endless circles. Now, it's no excuse at all, but the context for us all these days is that of noise. So it's not just me. I'm sure a lot of us struggle with silence. For example, at football matches these days, instead of remembering a great form of prayer with a minute of silence, you have a minute of clapping. And I speculate that this move towards clapping isn't just to stop the rival fans shouting out abuse, but also because we struggle with silence. That's the mark of the age that we live in. We're people far happier with noise than with silence. We have pipe music when we're shopping or at a restaurant. If you see people out jogging, they've often got a thing in their ear. If people are driving in the car, we often have the radio on. We find quiet very difficult. So why do I say this morning that making some space to be quiet is to try and listen to God, and it's very important. It's important because, first of all, we see Jesus doing it. He went away to be quiet. And surely as Christian men and women, we need to model ourselves on him. Jesus regularly went away on his own to make time for prayer. And he did it especially at crisis times. On his own in the desert, at the outset of his ministry, as he wrestled with what his task was going to be. When he got the news that his cousin John the Baptist had been executed, he went off on his own to pray. When he saw the shadow of the cross falling upon him, he knelt in the Garden of Gethsemane. In these and many other times, Jesus knew that even as the Son of God, he needed to be in intimate touch with his Father. He intentionally went and created the space that he needed. So if even Jesus needed to allow space to receive strength and blessing and divine reassurance, why do we, his disciples and followers, too often feel that we can manage very well on our own? Thank you. What a delusion that is. We can't. And then secondly, this idea of rhythm in life, being within the intention and heart of God, is set out so beautifully in that passage from Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verses 1 to 8. I think it's one of the most stunning pieces of poetry in the whole of the Bible. But much more than being poetry, it contains a very deep truth. There's such realism about it because we all know that there is indeed a rhythm to life. There was a time when you and I were born. There will be a time when you and I will die. And in the meantime, the whole range of events and emotions in Ecclesiastes will flow in and out of our lives. So how do we live within this rhythm of life which is set before us? Let me suggest to you how you might get rhythm and balance into your lives. And as you hear it, you might say to me, well, this isn't very spiritual. Don't need to come to church to hear stuff like this. But actually, there is no divide between the spiritual and the physical, between Christian activity and other activity. We live every part of our life before God, and we are answerable as to how we expend our energy, our time, our talent, our resources. So let me offer you a few practical ideas. First, we need to make sure that we take time off. Some people seem to make it almost a point of pride to say that they've not had a day off in months. Retired people like me are often saying, I'm busier than I've ever been. But as Christian people, that is a totally unacceptable attitude in Genesis, however we understand it. We're told that God worked for 6 days, and then on the 7th day he rested. Why should we think that we can do better than God? We need time off. And then second, and on a bigger scale, we need to take holidays. I think what we do on these holidays really doesn't matter. Sometimes going away, I think, is a bit more stressful than staying at home and having a nice time. But a holiday gives our bodies and our minds a real break, which means that we're better able to face the challenges of life when we get back. Then third, and on a far smaller scale, what about going to bed? You feel tired, but you think you do just one more job, or just see what's on the TV, or just catch up on the newspaper, or read a chapter of a book. Now, there's no problem in any of these things, but there is a problem if it takes you from your sleep. There's a tremendous amount of medical research at present as to the many, many benefits of sleep. One of them is longer life. Sleep is a God-given restorer, a gift to us. But we need to make time for sleep to work. Fourth, may I ask you if you've got a hobby? I love to go fishing. I go with Tony Solomon, as some of you know, and we hardly ever catch anything, but we have a pleasant time. Also, I love antiques, going around antique shops, and my idea of heaven really is being in a shed, working on an old chair and listening to the football on Radio 5. If you have a hobby, it's a great help to you being restored physically and mentally, with the added bonus, I would add, that you get out of the Christian goldfish bowl and you actually encounter people who are not yet Christians. That's good for you, and it's also hopefully good for them. So try to tune in to the God-given rhythms of life. There is indeed a season for every activity under heaven, as the writer of Ecclesiastes puts it here. So as we come to communion later, perhaps spend some time reflecting on the balance of your life. Now, all this could, I suppose, apply to almost anyone. So what about looking at it from what we might call a more spiritual point of view? And here, too many Christian people think that because they're working for God, they either do not need time off or should not take time off. But you can be so busy in the work of the kingdom that you forget about your relationship to the King. Make space for prayer, for Bible reading, for sitting, listening to God. A friend of mine who's a great activist was challenged on his sabbatical to spend more time with God. Since then, he's had a cup of coffee each morning and simply sits and looks out into the garden. Nothing deep, nothing super spiritual, but he tells me it's been a help and a blessing. Now, you may well say to me, that's okay for you. You're retired. You haven't got young children at home. You've got a cabin in the garden. You can sit in and think great thoughts. I accept all that. If you have a full-time job or a young family, carving out even just a 10-minute slot in the day is quite difficult. I accept that entirely. But I would still say to you that even just a 10-minute slot in a day with God will actually improve your efficiency at work, actually give you that extra bit of patience you need as a mother or a father. Try it. See if it works. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. Speaking personally, what's made a big difference to me was having cancer and then having to cope with the chemotherapy. I was very grateful for the chemo. I have to say it was a very challenging time. After the 3 weekly infusions and later when I was in hospital, I hardly prayed at all. I felt too ill to pray, to do anything really. I had to rely on other people, including some of you, to do the praying for me. Thank you for that. But I wonder if a time of testing, whether it comes through physical or mental illness, or relationship breakdown, or family worries, or redundancy, or financial disaster, or whatever, I wonder if a time of testing gives us actually an opportunity to sort out our priorities a bit. It may be that this present hard time of fear and worry that you face this morning is perhaps an opportunity to help you, perhaps even to force you into considering what is really important in your Christian life. This week on last Sunday, I went to see my old boss. He was my district chair, which in Methodist terms is like my bishop. And he was a good and a wise leader, and he trusted me to the big job where I finished my ministry. But I went to visit him, and he's now widowed. He can't hear well. He can't see well. He can't walk. He hasn't been to worship for many years. He's in an old people's home, and to be honest, he's lost all confidence in the church and is clinging on to his faith by his fingertips. And as I walked back from seeing him, I knew what I was going to be speaking about this morning, and it made me wonder how I would be if all my props were taken away. No partner to support me. No home group to encourage me. No sermons to teach me. No worship to inspire me. And I realized that all that would be left would be me and my God. All there would be left would be Jesus walking with me through the valley of the shadow. All there would be left would be the Holy Spirit gently ministering to me. And I realized it would be too late for me, as it will be for each of you, to start that intimacy with God at the crisis time. It needs to be now. You need to build up our spiritual resources. Yes, through Bible worship and prayer, of course, but also through making more time to just sit, to be quiet, to try to hear what God might have to say to you, but also to keep trusting even when God says nothing. So will you do that? Will you make space and time to be with God, to keep on creating that space, even when it seems empty? The great Edwardian preacher A.W. Tozer once said, "A man is as holy as he wants to be. That therefore means a woman is also as holy as she wants to be." You see, a closer relationship with God isn't about wishing for it. It isn't about hoping that in some way God might zap you and sort it all out. No. Stillness is an active decision. And stillness isn't just about silence. Rather, it's an attitude of openness towards God and listening for him. An Orthodox divine once said, "Centering yourself every day in the reality of God being present with you and the reality of you being present with God." Let's pray.